When reviewing compliance and legal issues over the many years that I've been with the ICS, I get a number of responses that really kind of play on the whole thing that it's not that big of a deal. I had one doctor indicate that as we were talking about this compliance and legal issue, he said, I prescribe to the thought that things aren't as bad as they seem. And albeit that may be well and good for social media and for the 24-hour news network, when we start talking about your license and potential disciplinary action and sanctions, it's not always the best attitude to take. In fact, I've had other doctors saying, well, I've been doing it this way for 20 years and it's still fine. And the answer is, yeah, but just because you've been doing it for 20 years doesn't necessarily mean it's legal. And so these are the challenges that we run into as we're talking about compliance and legal issues with doctors around the state. And so what I want to do is just kind of touch on some things and kind of give some cautions. One is this, and this is really, really important. When it comes down to disciplinary action on your license, it's not just that it's there. It's not just that patients can see it, because patients do look. It's not just the fine and the potential hassle and hiring of attorneys to walk through that process. There's also some other factors to consider. Once all of that's complete, all of your applications for any kind of network or even recertification with insurance networks or even revalidation with Medicare, they ask if you have had any disciplinary actions on your license. And if you have to check that box. Additionally, that disciplinary action is reported to the federal medical licensing boards, and of course that then is shared with all of those networks as well. And so it's much broader than that. Additionally, when you apply for medical malpractice insurance, that information is also requested on those applications. And so those are areas where a discipline, even for small, more trivial types of things, end up costing you in the long run. And so it is so much easier to be compliant. It's so much easier to tackle those things in your office and make sure that you nail everything down in your practice. And it's one of the reasons why we help our members as much as we do. We want to make sure that we give you as much information as possible to keep you as compliant and legal in your office and in your practice as possible, and as much as you'll take advantage of. So let me give you some answers to a couple of those questions. Well, Mark, I've been doing this for 20 years. Well, in a study done in another state, it found that 77% of those who were disciplined had been in practice for 20 years or more. In fact, as a whole, 35% of those disciplined had received some form of severe discipline. And so you got to understand that we're not talking about, small nickel and dime type things. We're talking about significant disciplinary actions. Let me give you some examples in Illinois, and this is important to understand too. When it comes down to Illinois and the disciplinary side of things, right now there are 2,665 complaints right now that are out there for the medical investigations unit. 574 cases have been assigned to the medical prosecutions unit, and 36 complaints per week were filed in the 4 weeks really leading up to about mid-June. And then when I looked at the disciplinary report before that, and really that number's holding true. So about 36 complaints a week are issued in regards to physicians in Illinois. That's a big deal. What do some of those disciplines look like, and what do they look like for chiropractic physicians? That's really important to know, because I want you to just be aware. And these are just some samplings. Of course, a lot of the things that we cover, not just in the videos, but also in our articles and our warnings that we give and alerts, all of those things come into play, and you should be very cognizant of those and remain compliant and legally compliant as well. But here are some of the examples and samples that we see in the disciplinary reports. Improperly altering a medical record or keeping poor medical records, engaging in improper relationship with patients. That's a boundaries problem. Having a criminal conviction. So if you have a criminal conviction, that also will result in a discipline against your license as well. Advertising violations, practicing outside of your scope of practice, defaulting on your student loan and not paying some sort of a tax, whether it be federal, state income tax, or even sales tax. All of that is critical. You understand that will result in a disciplinary action. Failure to diagnose, unprofessional conduct, practicing animal chiropractic without proper supervision. That's another one where people people have been disciplined and where physicians have been disciplined. Adverse actions by another jurisdiction. So if you have a license in another state and you are disciplined in the state, two things are required. Two things will happen. One is you're required actually to report that to Illinois, and number two is that will result in a discipline on your license here in Illinois as well. And the last one is failure to pay child support. And those are just examples of the possibilities. I found out that we actually had a chiropractic physician who was disciplined for utilizing, for injecting Botox into patients. And so that's, practicing outside of scope of practice. And again, these are just examples, and some of them are extreme examples, but some of those may fit into something that happens in your practice. And what we encourage you to do is remain compliant and stay away from any possibility of any kind of license discipline so you don't have those issues and challenges for years to come. We'll catch you next week.